All right, and we are live here at Beyond the Woodline. I'm Joe DeHoyos, and I have my lovely and talented co-host, Shannon Rogers. How you doing, Shannon?
I'm good, and that's debatable.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding. I'm doing good. A
that's
little
good.
tired. I had a long investigation last night, so
Where'd
not
you go
much
last night?
more.
Where'd you
Hill
go?
House Manor in Gainesville, Texas.
Oh, okay. Yeah. How did that go for you?
Yep. It went pretty good. It was really active until about 11 p.m. Then it just completely died down. So we got on the couches and went to sleep, and then at 4 a.m. the place just lit up. It was insane. There was banging and knocking and walking where there's nothing but crawl space above us. There's no upstairs or anything in that certain area. So it got a little weird, but I was glad because I was hosting that event and I wanted more activity for the people there. So it worked out.
And you've been there before in the past, right?
Yeah, that was my third time.
Okay. Where do you rank this at as far as one of your favorite places to go?
I like it. To me, it's a good filler location when you just want to, get a. It's not as expensive as some of the other locations.
Hmm.
Um, it's more of an earlier evening activity kind of place, but I still like going there because when it's close and I can't have a weekend of not investigating. So,
There you
but yeah,
go.
it's not bad. It's not bad. It's different. It's got
Well,
a
cool.
well in the middle of the living room, which is crazy. So,
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I need to get out there with you. That's one of the things I've always wanted to see, and I've seen that quite a few times. But anyway, as always, people don't tune in to listen to me and you. They always tune in to listen to our guests. And today we have with us Mr. Earl Grey. He is the Assistant State Director for Southern California. He's the Chief Investigator uh, for MUFON in California, right? Correct?
Correct.
And he's
Yes,
also a STAR team member.
that is me.
Yeah.
And I work with Kathleen Martin's Experiencer Resource Team, which is keeps me very, very busy.
Right.
We are sort of tip of the spear as far as abduction cases and visitation cases go. We're one of the two groups in the world that studies this with a team, a large team of investigators. Our sister group is Edgar Mitchell's group, with the Free Group, which is located up in Northern California. Ray Hernandez is who the astronaut Edgar Mitchell picked to run his group when that Edgar Mitchell passed away some years ago. So they're our sister group, and we kind of work hand in hand with those guys. We've done blind studies uh, and have compared notes quite a few times with them. So anyway, that between MUFON working as chief investigator and working with Kathleen Martin's ERT group, I'm very, very busy ufologist. I've personally closed 500 UFO cases myself.
oh,
Jeez.
awesome.
What got you started in this? Was it a personal experience or just something you were interested in?
I'll try to make a long story short here. Uh, when I was a kid, my mom it was sort of like I was born with this interest in outer space,
Mhm.
and anything that had to do with it. Now, of course, I was born in the end of the 1950s. Uh, was becoming cogent at the beginning of the 1960s, and everything was space age and the Mercury program and all of that. But it seemed like I had a certain propensity and an attraction to all things outer space. Interestingly enough, my mom had worked for Hughes Aircraft as one of Howard Hughes's personal secretaries. And my mom told some strange stories when I was growing up. The first one, I was maybe like 4 or 5 years old. And she later on told me that she wouldn't have told me the story, except she thought that I was young enough that I'd forget about it because she had, security clearances and oaths that she had taken. But she had worked in an underground base in the middle of the desert
Hmm.
for Hughes Aircraft. Howard Hughes himself sent her there. He used to communicate with my mom. He had two secretaries. Their offices were next to his, but he never came out of his office. He was a recluse, as people know. And so he would talk over an intercom system. After a couple of years, he got to really like my mom, and he trusted my mom because my mom had a background in law enforcement. So he trusted her, and he sent her. He used her as a stenographer for high-powered meetings with the Pentagon, people from the Pentagon. She dealt with the Army Corps of Engineers and Rand Corp, which was a part of Hughes at that time. And Rand Corp and the Army Corps of Engineers are who built all of our underground facilities. We started building those back in the early 1940s, maybe earlier than that. But Howard Hughes, you have to remember, made his fortune by creating the better drill bit. And that's how he became a multimillionaire. He was in oil at first, and he came up with this drill bit that was almost frictionless. And from what I hear is that he worked hand in hand with the Army Corps of Engineers through the Rand Corporation. They came up with a thing called the subterrane, which could melt through rock. It would melt and drill at the same time. And this is how they would make their underground facilities. And still is how Elon Musk is using the same method today. You see, he's kind of streamlined it, but it's technically the same method that they used back then. So my mom worked in an underground facility. She didn't tell me where it was, just that it was in the middle of the Great American Desert. It was the furthest she would go. And she said they had a little city down there, and she worked with German rocket scientists, Werner von Braun. She brought his name up a few times. Wow. Oberth, some of these guys that you can Google, and they were essential in the American rocketry program and got us to the moon. These are the guys who got us to the moon. So, but Mom said that they were working on esoteric projects under the desert. She didn't really go into it much more than that. But later on, my mom also would talk about alien life. And she said that alien life was a very real thing, that UFOs were a real thing. And I would kind of get this information slowly. And sometimes I would listen, I'd sneak around and listen to her talking to her sister, my aunt, about stuff like the Betty and Barney Hill abductions. And my mom said to my aunt, well, this could very well be a very real thing. From what I know, this could be a real thing. Right. And so that's really what planted the seed for me was my mom and what she told me. And I sort of spent the rest of my life trying to get more information out of her. And I didn't get a whole lot out of her, I asked her about people like Bob Lazar, and she would kind of, who? Bob Lazar? Never heard of him, But she did work for later on in life, she worked as a headhunter for aerospace. She worked for Lockheed Skunk Works when Ben Rich was heading up the company. And we know Ben Rich is the guy that said that we now have the means of taking ET home. Unfortunately, it's all locked up in black problems or black projects, and the American public will never know about it. But he would finish his lectures with a slide of a flying saucer, and he would sort of that would be his closing bit, as he would talk about that we now had the means of taking ET home, and he wasn't joking. He didn't laugh when he said that. It wasn't a punchline. It was a little hook for the out there that were, so inclined to listen to such things and ponder. Right. So anyway, that's as short as I can tell my origin story. It already took like 10 minutes to do it, but there you go.
No, that's fine. That's fine. The more you talk, the better. Yeah.
Yeah, your mom sounds like a very accomplished and interesting person for sure, to be able to been in those environments and situations. So that's pretty cool.
She passed away in 1999. She passed away. She kept getting unrelated cancers. And I kind of thought that she'd probably, that she'd been irradiated. I'm a nurse, and I've taken, multiple classes in symptomology and such. And so and my mom pretty much said that she knew what she was getting into when she did her work. and she knew there were risks involved and that she might be exposed to certain things. And I'm guessing that, I mean, they had to have a way of keeping the lights on, so to speak. If you have a little city under the desert, you're probably using a nuclear pile to run it off of.
Right.
So I'm guessing that probably a lot of people wound up like my mom.
Right. Yeah, and I've heard people, you know, I don't want to say complain, but I've heard people talk about, you know, symptoms after they've worked in this kind of environment before. So, you know, they've certainly.
Yeah. I've heard this too. Well, hopefully they're better at, you know, have deeper, you know, lead room walls. You know, if they are using a nuclear pile now to do the same thing, I'm sure, you know, you have to remember that back then it was, we're talking the very beginning of the Cold War, and it was imperative that we would come up with these new technologies before somebody else did. And that's the way that they approached it. It was a life or death thing to them. You know, you look at the Bay of Pigs and all that stuff that was going on. So, and it's still like that. You know, it's still like that. I mean, we're getting a little more transparency from the Navy and the Pentagon here and there, you know, like with a Tic Tac event that occurred over here off of the Catalina coastline. And I just closed a case in the same area, by the way. I closed it as an unknown. It was a 3-witness case that saw a USO, an underwater UFO that shot up out of the water and turned into 2 UFOs and started doing like this geometric pattern in the sky. The main witness is a commercial pilot. And he called his wife and his brother-in-law out. They were all camping in Catalina, and they saw this. It was like this golden ball. You know, he wasn't a UFO guy, so he didn't call it an orb. And he said it was like a big golden ball. And he said it shot out of the ocean, and we watched it turn into 2. And my friend Rich Hoffman, he closed a case where the Homeland Security, there was somebody at the Homeland Security Department that leaked a video of something very, very similar that happened, where a UFO split into 2 and went underwater and came out again. So we know that they can do this.
Right.
But it's very unusual to have such a good witness. You know, you want to have a military or pilot or some, you know, law enforcement or something if you have a case of that magnitude. And luckily, in this case, we had that. We had 3 sets of eyes on this. And the main witness was not a big, was not into UFOs. He in fact, he kept the story to himself for 3 years. He stopped working as a commercial pilot because he and his wife just had their first child. So he's changing his what he does to make a living. So he decided that he would come to MUFON and put out a case report. A wonderful witness. So there you go. The Tic Tac, you know.
Yeah.
But the Navy, you know, I mean, they're still telling us that I mean, this is everything kind of changed back in 2017, didn't it? With the New York Times story, where people ask me, well, when's disclosure going to happen? And I tell them, well, it already did. You know, people just ignored it, but it was on the front page of the New York Times. You don't get more disclosey than that, you know. It's pretty much disclosure. And then the military came out and said, this isn't us. And we think it's somebody else on Earth. Well, then who is it? You know, it's like, you know. So disclosure happened, but they still keep their cards very close to their chest, whether that's because they really don't know, or my guess is that they're trying to keep what technology that they have figured out to themselves. As soon as you come out and say, yeah, the big black triangles, right? These are ours.
Right.
Then you have to go and tell Russia and China and everybody else how you invented such a thing and where the technology came from. And I think it's such a ball of snakes for them that they would rather just play stupid. But they want people to watch and look. You know, they're interested in our reports.
Right.
So things have changed. It's different.
You know,
are recognized publicly by the Pentagon. This is a very new thing.
Yeah, I think for the normal person, people like me, it's hard to tell what's man-made and what's not of this earth. Just interesting story. I think I've told Shannon it before. I was fishing one time with someone else, and they were maybe 60 feet down to my right, and they were like, "Hey Joe, look up there, look up there." And we looked up, and maybe 300 feet above us, this round disc. We could only see the bottom of it, but it came in and floated right above us. I mean, ever so slowly. And we saw it very clear. There was like this little half a sphere on the bottom of it. It was black. The ship itself was like grayish, and it just was just slowly. I mean, just like anything, like an airplane wouldn't be able to fly that slow without falling out of the sky. Made no noise, and it was just so smooth. There was no wobble to it. And so we watched this thing go right down we're right on the coast on the jetties in Galveston, and it just went so slowly down the coast, right along the beach line, until we couldn't see it anymore. Like I said, and there was a little airstrip down maybe about 3 or 4 miles down, and you could hear those planes coming in, and about 5 minutes after that craft went out of sight, here comes two Hueys, just like following the same path. So maybe wonder if it was something that was man-made that they were just kind of following, escorting, or maybe if it was they got reports that they came to check it out, So, but I'm kind of thinking it was probably something man-made, just because of and because Ellington Field isn't very far from there, which is a military base. Maybe not even.
UFOs are very interested in our military bases, though. That's the other. So it may not have been man-made. It could have been our visitors checking up on our nuclear capabilities. Right. I mean, so article came out just last week where Jacques Vallée and a few other people, Lou Elizondo, who was from the ATIP program, was speaking about that he was being a little careful in his wording, but it sounds like the Navy are trying to bait UFO sightings, that they're trying to actually bring the aliens in. And the way that they do that is if you want to get ET's attention, you bring out the nukes, more or less.
Yeah, bring out the big guns, right?
Yeah. I mean, Shannon and I, we were all talking a little bit before we went online about CE5 stuff, and yeah, I think that it does work. That you can bring UFOs in positively with meditation and such. I the guys that charge money for this, I'm always very, very skeptical of. But I know people that do this, and they try this on their own, and it seems to work, and it seemed to kind of work for me, maybe too well once, but. The thing is that that the other way that you can bring them in with CE5, which I think is kind of a positive way, or you can do it the way that the military is apparently trying to do and bait them with nukes, right. Which may not be, I mean, you don't want to start an interstellar war, right? It's maybe not the best way to get their big attention. Right. But that's
2021 is not over yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you something. Let's kind of change gears a little bit here. As far as like UFOs crashes, how often do those happen?
Seems like they used to happen more back in the early days of this, and I'm not sure if it was a Trojan horse method of letting us know that they were here and getting some of the technology to us. I kind of that's kind of where my mind goes with it. I think that they were. That perhaps if there's any truth to the meetings that ET supposedly had with Eisenhower, and probably the same thing happened in other countries, and the way that the story goes is that we said no way, that they kind of proposed, we'll give you this technology, but you have to drop your warlike ways. You have to stop war. You have to get rid of your nukes, and we have to see you get rid of them. And apparently we said no. If there's any truth to this story, and I have a friend who just wrote a book, Paul Blake Smith, who just wrote a book about Eisenhower and the ETs, and he's got some pretty good evidence in this book. Yeah. He did very good research on it. And so maybe, and if we turned them down, then they watch us very cautiously, I think, now is the way they treat us. They want to see if we're escalating they don't want us to destroy ourselves. I
Right.
mean, my friend Robert Salas, who in Montana, he was the commander of a nuclear base, and they were hovered over by a flying saucer, and he watched every single missile go offline. It's like Minutemen missiles. It's just like bloop,
Right.
bloop, bloop, bloop. There were 14 of them or 16, something like that.
Yeah.
You watched them go offline and then watched them come back online, right?
Oh, wow.
And they're being hovered over by a flying saucer. The guys upstairs were going nuts.
Right.
It's all accounted for. Robert Hastings wrote a book called UFOs and Nukes with Bob Salas. His story was in there. Highly recommended. There's a film about it too, but that's a true story. Right. In fact, I teach a UFO class at a major university out here. Believe it or not, we're in a new age. I'm actually teaching at Otis College of Art and Design, and Bob Salas is going to be our guest speaker this coming Tuesday. So it'll be interesting to hear if he has any new stories. But he's come out as a contactee too.
Oh wow, that's pretty cool.
Visitations, yeah.
I knew someone in San Antonio who's in the military, and that person told me that they've stood out there on a flight line and they've seen UFOs hover above the bases out there. Yeah. And,
they're interested in us, and they're particularly interested in our military capability for some reason.
And give you a little bit of Bigfoot information about myself. I'm actually a Bigfoot researcher. So I was talking to this person about the Bigfoot stuff and how, like, sometimes even people like in the military or law enforcement, when they see these creatures, they're told you're not putting that in the report, and that person told me, she goes, yeah, that'll happen,
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, we hear that. They cover themselves very well.
Right.
There's stuff out there that they just don't want people to be thinking about too much. If they can't control it, they don't want it to be out there,
Yeah.
It's just the way it seems to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's so unusual that they're finally kind of, copying to the fact that UFOs are real now.
Right.
It seems like it's coming from the Navy, is the branch of the military that it's coming from. I mean, the Air Force, they did their Project Blue Book. They closed it up and they opened up Project Grudge, which was named very properly because they had a grudge against the phenomena.
Right.
And they didn't get what they wanted from Dr. J. Allen Hynek. He came in there as a skeptic and went out as a believer and said, there's something to this phenomena, that and MUFON, a lot of the way that we deal with UFOs is kind of based on Dr. Hynek's methodology, where you use a scientific method and you more or less try to debunk the case yourself, and if it doesn't match anything that's known, then you got your unknown. Hey there, Robert. Robert Farmer just said hello in the chat room. How you doing? We got a buddy there from the UK.
Oh, okay, cool. Thank you, Robert, for tuning in, buddy. We appreciate it. So, what about your personal experiences, or?
Well, we were talking a little bit about that. For a long time, I didn't tell people about my own personal experience. We were talking earlier about my mom, and when I was a kid, I heard her talking about the Betty and Barney Hill case with my aunt. My cousins we were outside playing Lost in Space, ironically, right?
There you go.
And we heard this heated argument, coming from the kitchen. So, as my three cousins and I, we like sneak around the door and we're listening. And there's my aunt. She's got Look magazine with the Betty and Barney Hill case in it.
Oh.
And she's talking to my mom. So this was about 1966, I think, 67. We were pretty young. I was like maybe 8 or 9 years old. And but they were talking about the case, and my aunt was kind of poo-pooing it. My mom was saying, well, now, wait a minute. From what I know, this could very well be a real thing. Mm-hmm. And my aunt I remember my aunt distinctly said, they stuck a needle in her navel, for God's sake. And I'm like elbowing my older cousin. What's a navel? Belly button. Shh. And I remember after hearing my mom talking about this stuff that I'm just standing out there in the backyard, and my other cousins went somewhere else. But I remember just feeling the willies, I guess is what you call it, with the kind of chills. And it was a hot summer day. Right. But it was when I first realized that maybe there was more to this than just like the Great Gazoo on the Flintstones, or, the way that a child would look at this. And I guess I kind of got the bug at that point in my life. But now when I first, I've had some wonderful cases from MUFON, but like Hynek said, Hynek's own rule of thumb was that 5 to 10% of all UFO reports are interesting, and the rest are usually prosaic. Mm-hmm. People will see a jet afterburner, and it'll look like it's two stationary lights, if it's leading, your direction. Or people will see, I get a lot of drone sightings. I get a lot of Mylar balloons and an updraft that will spin around. And I'll even get intentional hoaxes. I mean, I get a lot of CGI guys that want to do, and this stuff. Right. But there's that 5% that keeps you digging and keeps you looking. And I'll tell everybody, it's a very, very real phenomenon. You're listening to this show, you probably have some feelings about that already, but I'll confirm that, I've really thrown myself at this phenomenon for the last 6-7 years, at MUFON, doing this work that I do. And that 5 to 10% of cases, it seems to hold, Hynek had it right. Mm-hmm. And there are cases where there's just, I have one military guy he was a Marine that, where he saw a light in his car, and he was getting these thoughts in his head, you need to go back to your barracks, but he saw a UFO, and it caused he turned his car off because there were like a Tesla coil kind of electricity going through his dashboard.
Oh, wow.
And he thought, this guy was was kind of a hot rod he was trying to figure out what was wrong with his car. He'd put all of his savings into this thing. So he went out, he opens up the front of the car, the hood, and there's nothing wrong. He can't really find anything that's going on. Electrical systems, this is, an old car. This is back in the, late 1960s. So he can't really figure out what's going on. So he gets back into the car, and he just has this overwhelming feeling that he has to go back to the base. So he drives back to the base, and it was just himself. It was like a Friday night, so everybody was on leave except for himself and his buddy. And anyway, the guy was abducted out of the roof of this military base out here. I'm not going to tell you which camp, because this guy wants to go anonymous. Mm-hmm. But he had an encounter with these tall grays with black eyes, and they more or less told him that they wanted to take his soul from him. That they took his mind, and they let him know that. They said, we're controlling your mind, and soon we're going to take your soul. And they purposefully scared this guy. These guys were not nice. They were not, the little ET on the front of the bicycle, in the bike basket, right? These guys had some nasty attitudes. And anyway, he fought them. It was almost like a spiritual battle. He fought them, and he was dropped back into the middle of his barracks. His friend found him. He had bruises and this black gunk all over himself. And he was there huddling and shaking. This is like a full-on Marine. This guy, I've talked with him, and he's not like You know, not a guy that it was very hard for him to even tell the story, but
Right.
it's been
Right.
many years now, and he told us. I talked with his family. They said, Dad's been telling this all of his life, and I think he's got PTSD because of it. But you get stories like that. I was very naive when I first went into the UFO investigatory business. I thought I was going to see some cool, outer space hot rods, or, maybe meet Yoda type guys. And I tried the CE5 method that Shannon was talking about before we went on air, where you meditate. I used to meditate. I'd have the little mantra in the corner of the room that I would stare at, and I would do this kind of to get into a peaceful place so I could sleep well. Working as a nurse, you work weird hours sometimes, and that was the way that I found that I could calm myself and actually get a bit of sleep. So I used that same method, but I sent out the message that I want to meet you guys. I know that you're real. I know you're real.
Right.
I know what my mom said, and I know people don't want to be abducted, but I do. What am I? Chopped liver, more or less, and I kept sending that message out. And I honestly, I don't think that. Mostly, I didn't think it was going to work. I was closing UFO cases at this point. I remember the night I closed this one case, and it was a balloon that was shaped like a star. This guy saw, reported as a UFO, and it's like, well, no, I can buy this on Amazon. And I had a little argument with the guy on the phone, and it's a star-shaped UFO. It's like, no, it's a balloon, and you can buy one. Yeah. Here's the link, So anyway, I was kind of feeling my oats a little bit, and so I went upstairs. I was kind of disgusted with the guy. He wanted to see a UFO so badly. I get it. We all want to see a UFO, right? That's right. It's cool to see a UFO. It's not so cool to be abducted, though. If it happens in reality, it can be it can affect your life in a very deep way. So I went upstairs and turned the lights out. I was semi-recumbent in bed. I was getting ready to go to sleep. And I noticed, we had a cricket problem in our house. And I noticed that there's no crickets tonight. The sound was becoming very, very muffled, strangely muffled. And the room started flooding with light. I want to call it a blue light, but I think that it was just like this peaceful light. And I'm not thinking, where is this light coming from? It got brighter and brighter. And I just felt this sense of peace. But the wall, we had a television set, and there was a covered, like a wardrobe next to it. And that area of our wall started spinning around, and it looked sort of a sepia color, like a brownish, like if you poured cream into a cup of coffee is the best that I can explain it. And it kept spinning around, and it opened up. At this point, I realized I can't move. I had the proverbial, they more or less made me into a paralytic for a little while. I couldn't move my fingers. I could just move my eyes. And you hear this a lot with people that have alien contact. If you think about it, we sort of do that to lions or animals. We go and tranquilize them at first. So, I saw a video they did that with a rhinoceros, and they like lifted them up in the air upside down with a helicopter. I guess that's the way they transport rhinos now. So, but we do this, so I can't say that these ETs or interdimensionals or whoever they were evil. They just they want to make sure that you're not going to strike out against them or shoot them or something.
Right.
So anyhow, I can't move, and I start getting scared. I could see a shadow standing. The wall had opened up, and I want you to know, we had our neighbor's house was 10 feet away, so this was being done interdimensionally. There's no room to park a spaceship there. there's like, 12 feet
Right.
to our neighbor's house.
Right.
So they, so I believe that they use an interdimensional portal or opening to come through to us. I've been doing a study on light. I believe that the light, when people see a light, the lights on a UFO, for instance, it mesmerizes a person. It changes your universe into, kind of melds our universes together to where they can take action and interact.
Right.
So anyway, I still saw this tall person standing inside of the door. I couldn't see any features on him. I didn't see hair or anything like that. It was just like a very thin looking, tall person standing there. But lo and behold, 3 of the little gray guys that are 4 foot tall with a black wrap around eyes come towards me. It's like they were pulled towards me. They didn't walk up. It was almost as if they just floated like a millimeter off of the ground or something. And they're around my bed. And they were taking energy from me, or blood. I'm not sure. I believe that they were taking energy now, or life force, whatever that is. And they wouldn't stop. And I didn't get a comforting message from them. So I thought perhaps they didn't have good motives, that, maybe I'll wind up like one of those cows they find,
Right.
That are drained of blood. But they did their thing. They were very methodical. They worked together. And then they left the same way that they came in through my room. They left the same way. I never got a calming message from them. I didn't get any message. No telepathic communication. The wall closed up like it opened up the same way. And it took a while before I could move. But as soon as I could move, I started yelling, and I shook my wife. She was not very happy about it, Her whole thing was, you've joined this crazy UFO group, and oh my God, is this what I have to look forward to? Events like this, and have you lost your mind? I felt really stupid, but a couple nights later, my wife was shaking me awake. She was pacing back and forth. Our room was flooded with light again. Our room was flooded with the same light. No source for it. Wasn't coming through the window. It was just in there. And my wife, her comment to me was, you need to tell your little friends that they need to leave us the F alone. I don't know if you're like, if we're PG or R-rated here, but she used the word. She said, you need to tell your little friends they need to leave us the F alone. I already have insomnia as it is. And she was just kind of losing it, but it's like, she knows I'm not crazy now. Thank you, God, She didn't want to talk about it, but 2 nights later, we both woke up to our room flooded with light. And this time it seemed to be coming from outside as well. So we ran to the curtains, we pulled them, and it was like this light was coming down from above our house, but you couldn't hear a helicopter. I mean, we would hear helicopters all the time. This happened in Burbank, right? And, you'd have police helicopters, and you always hear, but this is perfectly silent. Like Joe was saying earlier about the disc that he saw, it was perfectly silent. The light was too bright. We couldn't really see where it was coming from, what the object was. And as time has gone by, my wife doesn't remember what she said about you need to tell your little friends, but she remembers the light. And it's hard for her to talk about it. She doesn't like me talking about it because, of course, you don't want people to think that your husband's crazy or you're crazy, right? There's a system of ridicule out there around UFOs, especially if you say that you've had a face-to-face. My state director at MUFON was very nuts and bolts about the phenomenon at this time. And now you have to remember, he had just hired me as a new field investigator for MUFON. And I'm telling them about what happened, and I'm getting the raised eyebrow. Like, yeah, you joined MUFON and you got abducted, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that he was going to fire me. I was, but I just told him, I said, I don't know what to tell you, Jeff, this is what happened. And I kind of kept this to myself for many years. I talked to Peter Robbins about it, Bud Hopkins' old assistant. Peter's a friend of mine and a mentor, and Peter knew about it, and I kind of kept it to myself. But I would tell my new field investigators, I would tell them, this is what happened to me. And just know that if you poke at the universe, it may poke back at you.
Right.
This interactive phenomenon. There's no such thing as being outside of the experiment. It's we think that we're the scientists looking through the, looking at the slide, and the fact is that we're on the slide too. And that's the way that this phenomenon works. So. And that's who I would tell them about this. And it wasn't until recently that I started telling my own story because of Kathleen Martin, Betty and Barney Hill's niece, who I work for. And she's had her own experience as well. She kept it to herself for a long time, but she felt that it would help others. To let them know that she had gone through this, that she's this intellectual woman, a respected writer and speaker, that, Stanton Friedman's co-writer on all of his best books, was Kathleen. And Kathleen was, she was an encouragement to me. And so I've been telling my story recently. It's still kind of hard to tell it because I want to be the UFO researcher. I don't want to be the researched, right?
Right.
I'm the guy that uses scientific principles in this field. But it's a very real, very, very real phenomenon, and you too can find yourself, on the other end of the, the telescope. It turns both ways, more or less.
Let me. Go ahead, Shannon.
I'm sorry. It's like, you were talking about poking the bear. We all kind of come from different backgrounds. I do the paranormal, do the UFO, Joe does the Bigfoot, but it's the same aspect. You don't go trying to intimidate or anger or poking that those things are the unknown, because you can get off more than you bargained for.
Right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we all three get ridiculed.
Yes. Well, we're finding that the paranormal and the UFO phenomenon are kind of close to each other. That it's sort of like the electromagnetic spectrum, where you've got visible light and radio and infrared and but they're all part of the same thing. And I was talking earlier about the free group that Renario Hernandez runs up, and he put out a wonderful book a couple years ago called Beyond UFOs, where he talked about contact modalities, and he kind of hints at that telepathy and all these different things, these phenomena that we think of as paranormal, are part of all this, that there's a greater science out there that we just don't understand quite yet.
And it's energy,
Yeah. But it's all part of the same phenomenon, I think.
And kind of going back to the energy thing, when you were talking about how I guess they were taking your energy, or extracting your energy or your blood. Do you think that's kind of what they meant when they told that Marine that they were going to take his soul? I mean, how did you feel when they were,
all, and I will say this: most encounters are benevolent.
Right.
I talk with so many different experiencers, and they, at very at least, they're told usually you're not going to be harmed. This is for the better good of humanity, and you're helping our race. And usually, but there are renegades out there,
right?
And also, I think that since I've looked back at my own experience, it's not like they did anything evil to me. I mean, it would be no different than tranquilizing a lion and tagging them and taking blood and whatever that we do, and then I'm sort of a zoo hypothesis in a way, because they kind of remind me of each other. So now for myself, it caused me great, Dr. John Mack, who was one of the early and wonderful guys in abduction theory, and a psychologist from, was it Harvard or Princeton? But anyway, he called it ontological shock, is what people experience after this, and that sometimes we think that it's evil when it's actually just, it shocks us.
Right.
It shocks our sense of reality. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe that's one of their motives, is that we consider, normal, right? And then the paranormal over here. But physics, okay, that's sort of like Newtonian physics, where it's just kind of very clumsy, but the universe is based on quantum mechanics, not Newtonian physics. And it's all kind of right here, right? But in quantum mechanics, things will pop into existence and pop out of existence. Or they may be light years away, but something here can control something that's in the next galaxy over. Spooky action at a distance, they call that, and it's a real thing in physics. And I think that maybe that one of the main things our visitors are trying to do is to get us to think more in a quantum manner. That they're trying to get us away from this real and unreal, this is impossible kind of ideology that we live under, that that the paranormal is just a part of normal, and we need to expand that understanding. A good way to do that is to pull the tablecloth out from under your dishes, so to speak, which is what happens when you are abducted or visited. It throws your sense of what reality is, and it changes you. It changes you in a very deep way. And maybe that's what needs to happen to humanity, to be able to not destroy ourselves with the kinds of technologies that we're harnessing these days, that we have to have a deeper selves to our core, and perhaps that's why they're doing this stuff.
What was that, Shannon?
I saw that. Oh, my son has this toy, and it's got the little beads in it. And it's almost like a stress ball, and I was.
I thought you're trying to make a point
with it while we were talking, and I'm like, no, I just happened to hold it, and I'm like, oh crap.
That's a reptilian.
Hopefully, I'm just causing ontological shock and no stress, and it'll.
There you go.
No, I was just, it's like keeps my hand busy, like the spinners they have. I was just sitting there playing with them, making it blow up. And, but I was listening, and I was my bad. Okay,
I thought it was a prop.
No worries. Yeah. So I gotta let people know, if you see a UFO or you have a encounter, anything that I've been talking about sounds familiar to you, you can go to MUFON.com and you can put in a report, and somebody like me will get that. If you're in Southern California, I will actually see the report. I may even wind up being the investigator on it. But we have investigators in all the states of the Union and in Canada and Europe. We're a worldwide organization, and it's the same website, MUFON.com. Very simple to make a sighting report, and we've been doing the Air Force's job since 1969 now, many years, and loving it. So
what would you say to someone who's had an experience or who's had an encounter like this, and they are scared? I mean, to come out and tell the truth, or just to come out, period. What would you say to those
people? Are real happy just to be able to tell their story and not be laughed at, or not be, get the raised eyebrow treatment. But we do the Experiencer Resource Team. We do have a couple of support groups that meet on Zoom, on the Zoom platform, so you can be in any state more or less and join one of the support groups. I'm going to be starting my own support group. I want to do one well, of course, because of COVID and all that, now we're doing everything virtually. But eventually, I would like to, actually meet in a place and do.
Right.
But anyway, there are support groups. We do have resources for you in the Experiencer Resource Team. There's a 30-question questionnaire if you've had alien contact or think that you might have, and you can fill that out. It'll say, if you go to MUFON.com, if you feel you've had contact or you've been abducted, it'll send you off to the Experiencer questionnaire. And if you fill that out and you would like to talk with somebody in a non-judgmental manner, this isn't like filling out a UFO report where somebody's going to try to prove it or anything.
Right.
It's a different philosophy with the ERT. We will listen to your story. We're not going to judge you or think that it's crazy because I've told you my story and it's crazy, I mean, I don't know if I would have believed that until I went through it. But a lot of us have gone through this ourselves. And everybody in the Experiencer Resource Team, we have doctors, we have psychologists, scientists, but everybody knows that this is a very, very real phenomenon and that it's personal. So go fill out the 30-question questionnaire, and at the end it'll say, do you want to be contacted on the phone by somebody? And you can check that, and then somebody like myself will get a hold of you, and you can tell your story and know that you're not going to be laughed at, taken seriously. And if you want to have some resources around that you need some help, we do offer those contacts.
Hey, go ahead, Shannon.
What does MUFON stand for, like the acronyms, for people like me that don't
Sure.
know yet?
Mutual UFO Network. It started out being the Midwest UFO Network, and back in 1969 we went worldwide, and so it went from the Midwestern UFO Network to the Mutual UFO Network. Our creed is it's a scientific study of UFOs for the benefit of humankind. It's a good creed.
I like it.
Yeah.
I got some footage to send to you later. That a
Cool.
friend sent to me.
Yeah,
it's intense.
Yeah, I've actually got something too. I'm gonna send it to you when we get off here and let's look at it too. A friend of mine sent it. It's from here in Houston. He's a friend of mine. He sent it.
Sure.
It's funny being involved with this. I mean, there are people who who won't come out and talk about it, but they'll message me on the side, say, "Hey, check this out. Tell me what you think about this." So I get some pretty cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's Stanton Friedman. His old thing was he would say, "How many of you think you've seen a UFO before?" And most of the hands in the audience would rise up, and then he would say, "How many of you reported it?" And you'd watch all the hands come down.
Right.
It's kind of the way that it's been. I think that things like, MUFON's old Hainer 1 show kind of got word out there that our organization was out there. And I'll hear from a lot of people, oh, well, I heard about you guys through this TV show, or Ancient Aliens mentioned MUFON.
Right.
Anyway, but we've been out there for, 52 years now, 52 years. It's going on 52.
That's a while, yeah.
Yeah. We had our 50th anniversary symposium, and that was the last symposium we had. The one that we were supposed to have in 2020 has been shunted up to July now, I guess. We'll be in Las Vegas. So it will be the first year we didn't have a symposium. But that'll be our 52nd anniversary as a group. And
well, I think it's awesome that y'all provide a platform to where people can, get it really looked into, because I'm sure most people are like, did I really see that? And it helps them maybe find some closure or more understanding of what they've seen, if it wasn't real or if it was,
We're all volunteer. We don't make money at this,
Right.
We we volunteer our time and our efforts. I mean, since I've been doing this, I was paid once to speak in San Francisco. $250, I think.
Oh wow!
I think I but I mean, it's not like this is a gold mine. I hear
Right.
that a lot, that you guys are in this for the money. Nobody's getting paid for this.
Yeah.
We have the one guy who runs MUFON as our executive director is on payroll. And but even the office workers, they'll sometimes pay them per job if it's like a real tedious job. But it's people are give their time up because they believe and love the phenomenon and want to help others that have experienced it. We're all curious. We love UFOs,
Yeah. I call this the big three: the UFOs, the paranormal, and the cryptid. I call it the big three. And there's very, very few people that make money doing this kind of stuff. I mean, there's probably just a handful of people that that can actually make a living out of doing this. So, with that being said, what advice would you give to someone who wants to get into, like, your field, for example, and maybe even some equipment they might pick up to use right away?
The easiest way, the way that I did it was if you go to MUFON and it will say become a field investigator, and you just click on that and it will run you through the steps. You need to get a field manual. It's a very good manual. They have a cheaper version that's an online version. And you'll read the manual and take an open book test, and then we will mentor you. We have a couple of video courses that you'll take that are free of charge that are on MUFONuniversity.com. And those are free of charge. And you can become a field investigator. I think that all in all, I think you can do it for like $150 pretty much is the whole thing. And you get your card and we'll start giving you cases. That's the beauty of MUFON is that we work locally. So the cases that I get are all Southern California cases, and we're a hot spot. We have a lot of cases. We'll have like 80 cases sometimes in a month.
Wow.
And of course, a lot of those drones and the Goodyear blimp, but then you'll have things like the sighting off of Catalina Island.
Right.
And I recently got an amazing 4-witness flying saucer case, a historic case where it was a mom and the 3 brothers. And it's an amazing case. I mean, as soon as I think I've heard it all, but these cases, they all have a common ribbon that runs through them, and you want that in science. You want to see similar things. If it was just like randomness every single time and chaos, then you would have to figure, people are just making stuff up. But there are things that I withhold from the public that I've learned about UFOs that I'll see pop up from case to case to case. And you see these markers pop up. You know that you're listening to something that really happened to this person. You'll hear the emotion in their voices. And especially when you have a multi-witness case, it'll change a person's life. It changed mine, I look at the night sky very differently than I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had.
I've been kind of I look at the woods different, and I'm sure Shannon looks at old abandoned houses different.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I stop. I do graveyards. I'm like, ooh, pull it over.
Yeah.
I do. Yeah.
So we're just about out of time. Earl, why don't you give out your contact information again and let people know where to reach you?
If you've seen a UFO or if you've seen a UFO or had an experience, go to MUFON.com, It'll say report a UFO. If you've been abducted or you've been visited, you can go to you've been abducted. It'll give you that choice. Go there and it will send you to the questionnaire. You can fill that out. Either way, or if you want to become a field investigator and investigate this phenomena for yourself, again, it's MUFON.com. And the best way to get a hold of me is on Facebook. I'm Earl Grey on Facebook. I still have a couple of spots for friends, so you go ahead and friend me if you want. I think I got 20. I mean, I just I'm sort of at the upper limit now. So, but but there's some spots. But I post a lot on Facebook. It's just Earl Grey. I don't go as Earl Grey Anderson on Facebook, and you'll recognize me. It'll say, MUFON's chief investigator in California. So
Cool.
good way to get a hold of me, and just message me there if you want. If you want to get a hold of me personally, just get a hold of me on Messenger, or you can get a hold of me at Earl Grey Anderson, Grey, Earl Grey Anderson at gmail.com. That's my email if you want to get a hold of me.
Cool beans. And if anybody wants to get a hold of him and you can't get a hold of me, and I'll be sure I'll message him or something, or for you guys, I don't mind being the go-between guy if I have to,
Sure. Yeah. There you go.
Cool beans. Shannon, you got anything to add or anything to ask?
No, it's just nice to meet you. And I have a friend, non-disclosed friend, that we've been talking about it a lot, that he really wants to dive in deep on this topic, and I think I can definitely send him to your information and stuff like that. Definitely interested in it. So
cool.
I think I can give some more.
I have no regrets. Yeah, I have no regrets. Joining MUFON and becoming a field investigator has been one of the most amazing things, if not the most amazing thing in my life.
Well, you can sense your passion about it. It's
yeah.
I can tell. Yeah, you can feel your energy about it. That's a good thing. We're passion pursuers. So
thank you.
Well, cool beans. All right, guys. Hey, guys in the chat room, I appreciate you guys' participation. It's always cool to see you guys participating, and it makes me feel good that you guys are being proactive. So thanks a lot, guys. And Mr. Earl, thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. We're gonna have you on again. There's so much more to cover, man.
Sure.
I think we just barely scratch the surface.
Off. I didn't even see all the comments. Anyway, thanks, you guys.
Cool beans. All right, guys.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, hold on real quick.
Bye, Shannon. Bye, Joe.
Bye, buddy.